Welcome to Trending News. Book, Cold Cases, Famous Unsolved Mysteries, Crimes, and Disappearances in America. Episode 1, Part 1. The Cigar Girl, The Death of Mary Rogar, 1841. It was a hot and humid day in New York City and 93 degrees in the shade as Mary Cecilia Rogers prepared to go out on Sunday, July 25, 1841. She put on a white dress, black shawl, blue scarf, light-colored shoes, and a leghorn hat and grabbed a parasol to protect herself from the rays of the midsummer sun. She lived at the boarding house she ran with her mother, Phoebe, at 126 Nassau Street in the heart of the city. Phoebe, a widow, began renting rooms in 1840 to men who were looking for work in New York City. Boarders included Daniel Payne, William Keokuk, Alfred Crommelin, and Archibald Padley. Once she was ready to leave for the day, Rogers knocked on Payne's bedroom door. The cork cutter had come to board in the fall of 1840. He became involved with Rogers soon afterward, and the couple was engaged. Payne was in the midst of shaving when she told him that she was off to visit her aunt, Mrs. Downing, and would return in the evening. As Payne said goodbye, he told his fiancée that he would wait for her at the stagecoach stop on the corner of Broadway and Ann Streets at 7 p.m., as he often did when she came home late. The three-story, red brick boarding house on Nassau Street was at the center of the city's newspaper, printing, and publishing industries and located close to City Hall, the port area, and Wall Street. It was quiet, as it usually was on Sundays, when Rogers stepped outside at 10 a.m. Shops and taverns were closed until late afternoon, and the streets were empty except for a few churchgoers and those out for an early walk. About an hour later Payne went to visit his brother, John Payne, and then he headed downtown to join the crowds that gathered on Broadway in the early evening. A storm blew in as he was walking towards Ann Street to meet Rogers at 7 p.m. Believing that she would most likely wait out the thunderstorm at her aunt's house for the night, Payne returned to the boarding house alone and went to sleep. It didn't seem unusual to anyone at the boarding house when Rogers did not return home first thing the next morning, but by lunchtime that Monday her continuing absence began to worry her mother and Payne. He went to see Mrs. Downing and discovered that Rogers had never arrived at her aunt's house. He continued to search for his fiancée, but neither friends nor relatives had seen her. He searched from Harlem to Brooklyn, Hoboken to Staten Island, but he found no sign of her. Payne walked into the offices of the New York Sun and placed a missing person notice to run in Tuesday's edition of the paper. It was not the first time that 21-year-old Rogers had disappeared. John Anderson hired the pretty young woman in 1838 to stand behind the counter at his tobacco shop on nearby Broadway, hoping her presence at Anderson's Tobacco Emporium would attract male customers. Gold lettering above the door listed the items for sale inside, including cigars, fine cut and confections. Rogers became known as the beautiful cigar girl, and the shop became a popular hangout for authors, editors, and newspaper reporters. One day in October 1838 Rogers failed to show up for work. She reappeared 2 weeks later, saying that she had been resting with friends in Brooklyn because she felt tired. She was surprised by the amount of interest that her disappearance had generated. A rumor began circulating that Rogers had been seen in the company of a tall and handsome naval officer during her absence. She never returned to work for Anderson.